How much does setting up a jumping spider enclosure cost? How much will it set you back if you're planning on getting one? Hey everyone, welcome back to Spooderpods. We're talking about that big question for anyone who's seen those jumping spider videos on the internet, has done their research, is ready to get one, wants to take the plunge. How much does it cost to do an initial setup for a jumping spider? How much will the spider cost you? What all the things going to be involved in looking after them? So let's start off with the cost of the spider itself. Now I'm going to do it in pounds. I'll try and do a rough dollar conversion for anyone who's watching from the US or elsewhere in the world. But our spider, a Phidippus Regis, who was sub-adult, cost us £20, and that doesn't include postage. You're going to want to have special delivery or some sort of priority postage, because obviously a living creature, and most places will insist on it. For us, that was £10 or just under. So for us, the total cost was £29.95, which would be approximately $37 if you're in the US. And that was towards the cheaper end of things. Some jumping spider variants will cost you up to £40, even more, which would be equivalent to approximately $60. So do your research on what type you want, do shop around because they can be expensive and it is quite an initial cost. You also want to make sure you get a type that you're going to be comfortable looking after as well, and do some research there. And also, another really important thing related to the cost will vary depending on their life stage as well. And for a newer owner, you want to get them really at sub-adult or adult. If you're experienced, obviously you can go right down to spider links, you'll know what you're doing. The next cost is going to be a decent sized enclosure and bits and pieces to go in it. Now luckily, Sophie stumbled on a really great small business in the UK called Entoscapes, and we got a kind of jumping spider starter kit which had everything we need to get started with him. So that was the enclosure, which is a 20 by 15 by 15, kind of minimal size, but he really loves it and it's really settled in there. And it also came with some natural branches, substrate, some moss to hold humidity, and some other bits and decorations in there, and that cost us a total of, I think it was £41. That was inclusive of postage. It was £36 without postage. So for a dollar conversion, that would be just shy of $50. And I feel it was slightly more expensive than other places, but you got a lot more for your money. The enclosure on its own, I think on their website, is about £25, which I think is very reasonable, because I've seen lots of others which are a lot more expensive but do not come pre-built and ready. And for a first sort of jumping spider, it was perfect to have everything ready to go straight out of the box, so we could set it up, get it all ready before we even got him. And talking about expensive closures, you don't really want to be getting them those sort of terror boxes. They're great for sort of like maybe isopods or temporary housing or for transport. But I don't know, from just my perspective, I like this lovely like crystal clear acrylic I can see through. It gives me more depth. There's loads. I know there's got enough ventilation in there, and you can see a wide variety in enclosure prices. So do shop around. I was quite lucky by stumbling onto the place I did. Just do your research basically, because again, just with the spider and the enclosure cost, we're already up to about £65–70, which is about $90. Next thing you're going to want is food for your jumping spider. Let's assume it's a sub-adult or adult. You're going to be wanting to get pinhead crickets, mealworms, dubia roaches, maybe some green bottle flies, and most live food will be relatively cheap to buy. You can get lots of sort of cricket supplies. We'll do them for between £1 or £2, again $2.50. Same with mealworms, but the postage will add up the cost. So we're talking about maybe about $10 every time you do an order, or sorry, £10 or $14 every time you do an order for food. But if you look after it properly, put it in a little terror enclosure with substrate, feed it well, they will last for quite some time and you'll be able to keep providing them to your spider. Again, it's a recurring cost, so it will add up over time, but it's the sort of price you pay for having an animal that needs to eat live food. The final cost is going to be extras. Now, this cost will mount up if you've just bought an enclosure without anything else. At this point, you're going to be wanting to buy substrate, you're going to be wanting to buy bits for your spider to climb on. There's all kinds of novelty extras, which I'll do a little pan through the cage now while I'm talking, that you can find on Etsy and other places, which we were suckered into, like signs with Beware the Spood and all sorts of other bits and pieces, like, you know, a little mushroom and stuff. These all add up, but those are down to you. If you go for all natural, that cost will go down a little bit. If you want to go sort of thematic, which I've covered in a previous video, which I'll leave a link for now, you can spend a lot more on it. Also beware, there are some extra costs as well. A lot of people recommend light for a spider because jumping spiders have such a great sense of eyesight. Other people will argue, and I don't really want to get into discussions about heat mats and lights here. Now, let's just assume you have to buy a light source and maybe a temperature monitor to keep an eye on things. That's going to cost you a bit extra too. So I'm going to try and tally up a rough estimated total cost for you guys now, so you get an idea of how much just getting into the hobby is going to cost you as a minimum. So I'm going to take a very conservative estimate of this, just so you guys don't get too intimidated, because they really are charming creatures to look after and they don't take that much effort. And compared to other pets, the cost isn't that high. So let's tally it up. So we've got roughly £30 for our spooder, we have £35 for enclosure, and we'll include substrate within that cost because it should be around there. Then we have £10 for food, initial outlay, then very conservative £20 for extras. So that's going to cost approximately £95 as a startup cost, or that'll be about $120. And I think that's quite expensive, honestly. You probably could do it a bit cheaper, but this is without skimping on stuff like a proper sized enclosure, a light, a little cheap temperature sensor, having the food ready, having everything ready for them, because all these costs are essential, I feel, and will set you up for success with your Spood. Now, if you are looking for some slightly cheaper bits and pieces, I do have my Amazon store, which I have a link for in the description. If you're in the UK and you are looking for some decent enclosures which are very well made and are a decent price point, do check out Entoscapes, because I'm really happy with the enclosures I've got from them, and I'm almost hoping to sort of maybe do a partnership with them in the future, because they're really helpful and really friendly, especially if you're starting out in the hobby. They're happy to provide you advice and get you off on the right foot. So guys, that brings me to the end of the video. Hope you found it useful and it prepared you for the cost of having a jumping spider. If it put you off, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe save up a little bit and get into it later, because as I said, they're really charming, really lovely little creatures, and it's just seeing them move around and have fun is great. But in the meantime, from me and Mr. Tank, take care and see you later.